Good evening, everyone. It's time to go to work. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members of the public are invited to address the authority regarding any item that is not listed on the agenda. Are there any members of the public here tonight who want to take advantage of this? Seeing none, we'll move to the approval of minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
If the record you just note for until Mr. Trotter gets here that I'm representing SWAT for a little bit.
That what?
That I'm representing one of the seats for a little bit.
Okay, the next item is the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to remove any items from the consent calendar?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Moving to the regular agenda items. First item is item 4A8, approval of proposed 2018 Contra Costa Transportation Authority state and federal legislative advocacy program.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Lindsay Willis, the Director of External Affairs. And tonight, for your consideration, we're asking you to approve draft state and federal advocacy platforms for 2018. These are intended to be broad guidelines and a lens for staff and your state and federal advocates to use when monitoring legislation and bringing it back to the authority's attention for a position. As in previous years, we intend to bring specific bills or policies that we want you to take a position on back before this board to take that position. This is really just kind of a roadmap for our advocates to use in monitoring legislation and advocating for the authority's wishes. In the APC packet, you don't have it before you, we also included what we called a legislative scorecard for 2017, which was something new that we did this year, in part just to give you a little sense of how things progressed over 2017 on the roadmap you approved for that year. I know oftentimes it seems like we carry over several items from year to year, so we wanted to just kind of show you why maybe some of those continue to appear in front of you for multiple years because maybe they're not progressing, or maybe they got pushed forward, or something else was a higher priority for the legislature during that time. So I'm going to begin with the federal advocacy platform. I'm not going to go through every item, just kind of very broadly. Each of the things on there can kind of be categorized into one of three buckets. I think the first one is funding. We're always looking for opportunities to leverage our measure money. And if any of you have been with our executive director in Washington, D.C. or Sacramento, you know that he's always asking for money and searching for ways to make the taxpayer dollars we collect go further. So there are quite a few items on there related to finding, maximizing, and leveraging funding to help deliver our improvements to the public faster. Efficiency is another common theme. In here, anything that we can do to help deliver our projects more efficiently, more safely. We know that the benefit to the public is when they get to use the facility or the improvement, not when it's sitting on a piece of paper as a plan. So we're always looking for opportunities for innovative project delivery, and that's something that we're looking at on the federal level as well. One of the proposals that was in the FAST Act was authorization for USDOT to do a pilot program allowing states to approve environmental documents using state guidelines instead of NEPA, so you don't have to do both And that's something that they just put out a notice of proposed rulemaking on, we commented on, because anything we can do to speed up that process, we're in favor of. And the third kind of bucket that categorizes all of these is technology. Technology has kind of become an integral part of many people's lives. There are many things we could do with it to help connect our communities, deliver service to people who maybe haven't had the greatest opportunity to take advantage of it before. There are many tools that can help us manage congestion. So, we're also working on connected and autonomous vehicles. So we need to look at how we can be prepared for a future to accommodate them. So those are kind of the three main areas that this platform encompasses. And I'm happy to answer any individual questions you might have about particular items. We also have our state advocate, Mark Watts, here this evening, who's going to present the state legislative platform. And I can either answer questions now or I can take them at the end and turn it over to Mark. So I leave that up to you.
Who has a question? I don't see any.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Mark for the state one.
Do we have a motion?
Well, do the state one first.
The what?
I'd say we do the state one first.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, no. I was trying to find. The two of them look so similar.
They do.
I couldn't. Huh? What?
8-3.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. At the APC, we went through the state legislative program for 2018, and there's a couple of items I want to just highlight for your attention and then be prepared to answer questions on the whole range here. On page 2 of the state legislative program, staff is recommending that you consider sponsoring or supporting legislation to update the sunset date for the sales tax authorization. When we went through this legislation 2 years ago, I guess it was now, we were amending the statute that Alameda had first done through themselves, and it had a 2020 sunset date. It may be appropriate to take a look at either removing or extending that sunset date for the use of the new sales tax authority. So that's before you for your consideration. In addition, on page 3 of the agenda of the program, under the goal of project delivery, improving and enhancing project delivery, there's an item that we would recommend to you to look for opportunities to support improve project delivery for projects such as the ferry facility in, in new ferry service in Contra Costa County. And lastly, one item that was discussed very thoroughly at APC was the issue of a recommendation that had been made for looking for CEQA streamlining related to Gomentum Station. Staff has done some more additional research pursuant to direction from APC and is recommending we delete that item for this particular legislative year. So with that, I'll be prepared to answer questions on any of the other items or those in particular.
Actually, I wanted to add one more thing. Sorry, Mark, before we discuss anything. One of the other things that we wanted to highlight was that as SB1 goes into effect this year, we want to be sure that we're also looking for ways to make sure all of CCTA's projects get on any particular lists that are circulating about that. So that may be a suggestion we may want to either directly amend in here or a potential direction from the board. As those lists go out, we want to make sure that Contra Costa is getting as big of share as possible as SB1 dollars.
Thank you.
Questions on the state program? Go ahead, Amy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just wanted to follow on that final point with regards to SB1. You know, what we found out from RM3 was a lot of people were doing a lot of work in the hallways early on, and it was really important to get on those lists early rather than being forced to come to the later in the process. So Can you talk a little bit more about how you envision this process and what you feel that we need to do from an advocacy standpoint in terms of how you envision this plan for the coming year? Obviously, it involves legislative recommendations, the committees, the CTC, and how you'd incorporate that into the legislative plan.
Well, frankly, most of the opportunities for project funding will come through grant solicitations. This, as SB1 unfolds, at the last CTC meeting, they completed their final set of guidelines and have had commenced with solicitations at that point in time, and there's several more in the chute coming through. And I think it's important, if you have projects that you want to feature, that what I've found to be successful in prior years surrounding Prop 1B, for example, is to make the rounds early and just let them know what the priorities are, so that when a push is being made for a specific project in a specific category, they're familiar, the delegation is familiar with that particular project. When you come back through and ask for letters of support or contacts to be made to the administration. So I think it's front-loaded if you have if staff has a game plan for responding to solicitations, and I think you go through with fact sheets early in advance.
So that would be part of your plan?
Correct.
To
That
do
would
that
be-
in
yeah,
Sacramento?
right.
And then I guess I'm mindful of the regional dynamic too, because I know that the region is going to be preparing lists. So, any support that our staff and legislative effort can be in terms of that step too would be really important.
I concur.
Commissioner Warner?
I was just going to agree with Amy. I was going to ask a similar question. Also, I think on the SB1, obviously we have two things: how it's being implemented, making sure we're getting our fair share, while there are two forces on the outside that are working to get rid of it and put two ballot initiatives on there. So I think our advocacy has to be on the positive side, so the benefits that we're getting, as well as working to protect our best interest in here. And the other thing I just want to say, both to Mark, you and Lindsay, and we got to talk about this a lot in APC in detail. You guys are a great team. Our new federal legislative representatives are doing a great job. I think together you guys do a great job. And it was an exciting year. And I think this year in transportation and infrastructure as a whole is also going to be exciting for different reasons, because of the implementation. And I still think there's a couple more bills that are going to come through that I think is going to really benefit all of us. And I'd be glad to move the item as you presented it.
And I would second that with an additional kind of a comment/request. And I think that's going to be important that we are, as elected officials representing CCTA in this county, that we are all prepared to help our colleagues understand the benefits of SB1 and how it impacts directly in Contra Costa. So I think it's probably available in different places, but maybe a little more compact list of what does Contra Costa get out of SB1, even a city-by-city list of the impact on local streets and roads. I think we all had that at one point from the League of Cities, but updating that to make sure we have it ready. When somebody says, I don't want that gas tax, why would I want that? We can say, this is what it's doing for you in your town. This is what it's doing for you in your commute. This is the kind of project we can accomplish with this that we wouldn't be able to without it. And without that information handy for us to communicate, we're not campaigning at all. We're just giving out information. But I think it's important that we have a concise list of that kind of thing ready for us to be able to help educate our public.
Was that a motion?
That was a motion. That was a
And that
second.
was a second? Okay, any further?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yes,
Don?
I had two conversations relevant to this item today. One was with Rick Ramis here, who's General Direct Manager of County Connection, and the other one was with Lindsay. And I think Lindsay probably had the second conversation with Rick if you reached him, so maybe you'd like to report on that. Okay, well then I'll report. I asked Rick to take a look at this and make comments from a transit operator's perspective, and recognizing he's just one of the several that serve the service. He was suggesting an addition to the cap and trade funding for the state, which would seek some changes in how a large share of the monies that transit agencies get are allocated, in the sense that a large share of the money has to go both to routes that serve disadvantaged communities and are in environmentally risky areas. And the complication for County Connection in particular, that limits us to one route. So, for example, we can't use any of that money on the Monument Corridor, for example, which certainly meets the criteria of relatively disadvantaged. So I think what Lindsay and I talked about was maybe having Lindsay and Peter meet with the next transit operators meeting, see if there are any other amendments they wish to suggest, and then have that brought back to us at a future meeting. So I'm just letting everybody know.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we did have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Next item is item 4A9. Accept annual audit reports. Comprehensive annual financial report. Auditor's report to the authority board. Single audit reports and Measure J compliance audit reports for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2017.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners, and happy holidays. As we work in finance throughout the year, at the end of the fiscal year, we have to bring to the authority board a number of our financial reports and have them accepted by you. At the APC, we went through the comprehensive annual financial report in detail. We had David Bullock from MGO here to talk about the role the auditor played and discuss any findings, which there were none, walk us through some of the processes as well. We also talked a little bit about the single audit reports. There was about $13.1 million of federal expenditures for the authority this year, and there was no findings in that one as well. And then we also do the annual Measure J compliance audits. We go out and we select 3 different firms to look at how they use the Measure J funds, and that's something that's part of the measure that we do on an annual basis. So on all of those, everything was clean audit on that piece as well. So as we look at the comprehensive annual financial report, that's the individual fund financial statements and bringing it to a government-wide perspective. And it's a presentation that's done to give a clear picture of how the authority looks and compare it to the prior year, and talk about some of the large activities and different things that are happening throughout the year. So if we look at the governmental activities, which is on the slide here presented, the biggest items are the assets. You have about $290 million in assets, which is made up of cash and investments, and we have the restricted cash and investments, which is bond proceeds and additional items set aside related to some of our debt. So you can see that there's an increase between the 2016 and 2017 year, and in June we issued a bond. It was the 2017 bond, and we got about $86 million in bond proceeds from that, and then that bond also had a premium as well, so we netted about $100 million in bond proceeds. As we look down to the liabilities, which is our biggest piece, you can see that the long-term debt is $561 million in comparison to the prior year. The increase, again, is strictly related to the issuance of the new debt. Debt is a very important feature for the authority, as probably about 60% of the work we do is related to capital expenditures. As Lindsay was mentioning earlier, we like to go out and leverage the funds from Measure J and get other grants. So it's always good to have our funds available at the time the project is starting and be able to go on to the next projects. The next slide here is the governmental activities. This is mostly, it's sort of an income statement that shows what our general revenues are, our program revenues, and our expenditures, and it goes through in details by the different programs. Our sales tax revenues was up about $1.6 million, or about 2% year over year. Which is good. We have our program revenues, which is our grant funding that we go out and we leverage. And a lot of the funds, if you can see in the capital grant section, it went from about 50.5 in 2016 to 36.3. Again, we keep wanting to stress it's never a loss of funding, it's a timing of our capital projects and the activity that we have. Our expenses, as we go through the individual projects, the administration section saw an increase. We had the Measure X expenditures, and those expenditures were 100% related to just putting the measure on the ballot there. Project management saw a slight decrease. Programs continues. That's all based off a percentage of the sales tax revenues that we receive, and those funds are always earmarked for projects and programs. The transportation projects is something that is always a huge expense for the authority. Last year we had $130 million. This year it was $81 million. Again, it's just the timing of the large projects. This year we had the Balfour. In 2017, we had the Balfour interchange that started. We had the I-80 interchange as well and improvements, and there were some larger expenses related to EBART. Congestion management seems always to be about the same. And then we go down to debt service and interest and related to fees. Again, we had the new bond issuance for this year, and principal increases, but we pretty much have a level debt service through the life of the agency for all our debt service there. So that's kind of a general overview. At the APC, we went into a lot of the details again, and I do have to thank Commissioner Arnrich for his suggestions in the CAFR. When we prepare our CAFR, there's the Government Financials Board who tries to set us up with a framework of how to present the CAFRs. So for the accountants like myself, we go through that and we try and just follow everything strictly, and sometimes we don't look, at the end user who's not living it on a daily basis. And his suggestions were to Measure C. Measure C has about $20 million in there. We didn't get into a lot of extra detail in the CAFR. We talked specifically about the general fund, which is Measure J. In next year's CAFR, we're going to add some comments in there on Measure C and the status on that and what makes up the $20 million in that piece. Also, as all of you at your local agencies, some of the new things that you guys have been doing is putting on your pension liability. There was a $776,000 pension liability for the authority. That's reported as of June 30th, 2016. We're always a year behind. Just since the APC meeting, CalPERS came out and said that their interest earnings for the year were closer to about 11.2% for the year. So that deficit is going to be greatly reduced with the interest earnings that we will receive on that as well. So other than that, staff recommends we accept the annual audit reports, and I would like to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions? Commissioner Askew.
Move to accept the annual,
We have
too
a
soon?
Motion by Askew, second by Pierce. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Nice job.
The next item is 4A11, Senate Bill 1, Local Partnership Program. Staff seeks approval of Resolution 17-60-P, which will authorize staff to nominate Innovate 680 for the authority's LPP first cycle formulaic share in the amount of $4.7 million and so forth. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, and happy holidays. My name is Hisham Noemi. I'm the engineering manager with CCTA. Today, we're requesting your approval on what to do with our share of the state local partnership program, the formula-based of that program. This program is intended to reward self-help counties such as ours who have transportation-specific sales taxes, parcel taxes, or fees. In Contra Costa, in addition to CCTA, which have Measure J, the cities of El Cerrito, Martinez, and Orinda are considered self-help agencies. Both El Cerrito and Martinez have half-cent transportation sales tax, and Orinda has a parcel tax that is specific to roads. SB1 represents a major investment in the transportation infrastructures after years of lack of funding. As you recall, in 2016, the California Transportation Commission had to delete about half of the STIP programming due to the shortage in funding. It was actually a negative fund estimate. This is a welcome change, and we are very excited to have the opportunity to leverage our funds. The local partnership program, the formula-based local partnership program, is one of 16 programs in SB1 that are expected to invest a total of $5.2 billion annually in the transportation system statewide. Most of the funding in SB1, about 3/4, will go to maintain what we have. We call this Fix It First programs. Out of the 16 programs, 6 will be competitive and make about 20% of the $5.2 billion. We plan to submit applications to leverage our Measure J funds for these programs. Most of the applications are due in January and February. The guidelines for these programs were adopted by the CTC in the past couple of months. They specify who can apply, how much is the match, what phase you can put the funding on, and how many years before the next call for projects will be issued, among other things. One consistent theme in the guidelines is that CTC is not allowing supplanting of funding, so you couldn't take out your committed funds like Measure J and replace it with SB1 funding. The formula-based local partnership program, which is highlighted in red in this table in front of you, is one of 2 programs in SB1 where we actually don't have to compete to get our money. And this program is really the subject of this agenda item. The CTC adopted the final shares for this program, the local partnership program, on December 6th. CCTA, along with El Cerrito and Martinez, will get a total of $5.2 million from the first cycle of the program. This is about $2.6 million a year. Unlike Orinda's share, the CTC methodology did not specify how much of the $5.2 million should go to El Cerrito and Martinez. So you get to decide that. In addition, you get to decide on what project to put the remaining funds on. So in regard to the first decision, how much to give to El Cerrito and Martinez, we looked at 3 options. We looked at using sales tax revenues as a way to figure out how much each city will get. We looked at population as another way. If you look at both options, 1 and 2, each city will get less than $100,000 a year. The numbers in this table are for 2 years. They will get somewhere between 50 to 60 if you look at the revenue, and they will get between 50 to 80 if you look at the population. Option 3 actually guarantees a minimum of $100,000 per year per agency. And this is actually consistent with the goal of the program, which is to reward self-help agencies, as well as consistent with the guidelines, the CTC guidelines themselves, which stated that if CTC determines the explicit shares of the agencies, no one will get less than $100,000 per year. And that's our staff recommendation, is to go with option 3. The second decision is what project to nominate for our remaining share, which would be about $4.8 million, assuming we give the minimum shares for the cities. We looked at all of our projects in the strategic plan and the restrictions imposed in the guidelines, and we recommend nominating the environmental phase for Innovate 680 for this first cycle. The staff report goes through all the projects in details and explains our thought process why we're making this recommendation. I also just want to note also that every year we will be coming back to you to nominate projects for our future sales for our future shares of this program. So we will have an opportunity to fund other projects as well as to make sure there is sub-regional equity. So with that, we recommend that you approve Resolution 1760P, which will program $200,000 to Ulceri to $200,000 to the City of Martinez, and the remaining $4.8 million to the Innovate 680 project. And finally, before I end, I want to end on a good note that our jurisdictions in Contra Costa have been competing for the competitive programs, especially the ATP and the transportation planning grants. We actually assisted WestCat and WICTAC in getting the $640,000 for the next phase of the Express Bus implementation study. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions?
I don't have any questions, but at APC, we agreed with everything that Hisham has presented on a fair and equitable way as the minimum funding. I think as a city rep, the idea of using Innovate 680, it's the right place that we need to invest, and I would move this motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Second, we have several seconds. I'll give it to Taylor. Any speakers on this? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the next item is 4B7, public hearing, adoption of proposed 2017 congestion management plan, update for Contra Costa. So we are now at the public hearing item related to the adoption of the 2017 congestion management program. Prior to opening the public hearing, staff will give a presentation on the 2017 congestion management program. Afterwards, the public hearing will be open for any comments. If anyone would like to speak on this item, please fill out a speaker card and give it to the clerk of the board now. So go ahead and proceed with the staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair Butt. Good evening, authority members. Matt Kelly with CCTA here. As the CMA for Contra Costa County, we are required by state legislation to update our congestion management program at least every other year. The 2017 update of the CMP is our 13th here in Contra Costa. The CMP has 5 primary requirements. First, we must establish level of service standards for a countywide roadway network, which includes all the major arterials and state highway routes. We must establish performance measures to evaluate the current and future multimodal performance of the system for the movement of people and goods. We must have a capital improvement program that identifies projects that seek to maintain or improve the performance of the multimodal system. We must have a program to analyze the impacts of land use decisions on the transportation system. And we must have a travel demand element that promotes transportation alternatives to the single occupant vehicle. And I mention this each time, every 2 years, but I just want to give some background on the CMP legislation. It was established back in 1991 in Sacramento, and the program was based on our existing growth management program, which was established under Measure C. So because of that reason, many of the requirements are covered under our growth management program. So throughout the congestion management program, we defer to our growth management program to satisfy many of the requirements. And one thing, unlike our countywide transportation plan, the CMP is exempt from CEQA analysis. So we do use the CMP to document our current activities, our policies, and major milestones here at the authority. We use it for monitoring the system every other year. And we also focus on updating that capital improvement program with all of our latest projects. The CIP has gone up in value this year. It's at about $16.5 billion. It includes all of our major projects, it's been updated with anything that has been proposed since the 2015 update. That includes new projects, new to us, like the McCallum Overcrossing station, multimodal station at the bypass out in Brentwood. It includes the Richmond San Rafael toll bridge improvements proposed as part of Regional Measure 3, and the Innovate 680 program of projects, as well as the projects included as part of the West County High Capacity Transit Study. It includes all projects proposed under the expenditure plan from a year or so ago, the countywide plan, OBAG 2 grants, and Regional Measure 3. One thing we do is we document all of the performance measures that we're using as part of our different programs. That includes those from the 2017 CTP, which was just adopted, Plan Bay Area 2040, the regional RTP, the performance metrics used by each of our transit providers in the county, as well as the multimodal transportation service objectives from the action plans, which were also recently adopted. The item we devote the most resources to is the monitoring of the system, where we monitor all of our state highway routes for their level of service, as well as 65 intersections around the county. Since 2011, we've been monitoring the bike and pedestrian counts at those intersections. So along with the vehicle level of service, we've been tracking the trends of bike and pedestrian activity at those intersections. We will be presenting the results of that report at the January Planning Committee meeting. So this CMP update also documents the changes in level of service that were removed from CEQA analysis under Senate Bill 743. We assume at some point in the next few years that the state will catch up with itself and change the level of service method of analysis that is required in the CMP, as they changed it in CEQA. So we've figured by 2019 or 21 CMPs, those performance metrics will be aligned at the state level. We will also, under separate cover, submit a report to MTC documenting our travel demand model, which we are required to, as we are required to be consistent with the regional travel demand model used by MTC. So the draft CMP was released in July for review and comment. We've incorporated all comments in this final proposal for adoption. The MTC board generally adopts all the CMPs at once, usually in December, but I believe they've pushed it back to January because I don't believe they adopted it today. But our recommendation is to adopt the CMP under Resolution 17-59-G tonight and transmit to MTC for their adoption of the 9-county CMPs. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions from board members? Okay, it's now time. The public hearing is now open. I don't have any speaker cards, therefore I assume there are no speakers. Okay.
I have no speaker cards.
Say again?
I have no speaker cards.
Yes, okay. The public hearing is now closed.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would move Mr. Chair, I would move that we accept the recommendation.
Okay, yeah, okay. Motion from Glover, second from Pierce. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. And the next item is 4.1, a new item, confirmed transmittal of CCTA comment letter to Caltrans on the draft 2018 California State Rail Plan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Happy holidays. Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning at CCTA. And we received a letter from the City of Hercules saying that they were going to comment on the State Rail Plan, which was issued as a draft back in October. and we said we'd be happy to do that. The comment period kind of closed in on us rather quickly, and so we, as staff, decided to send off a comment letter that was supported by our local jurisdictions and by the San Joaquin Rail JPA. So looking through the Caltrans State Rail Plan, it's a draft plan. We did notice that in their 2040 vision for the future, they left out two very important capital improvement projects that we think are key for the future of Contra Costa. And the first is the rail station in Hercules. They failed to mention that. And the second is the proposed new station in Oakley. So the Hercules station is along the Capitol Corridor, and we expect to have a stop there in the not-too-distant future. The Oakley station would be along the San Joaquin rail line, and both of those stations also have co-benefits for freight, especially the Hercules station has co-benefits for freight because they're adding a third track there. So the letter is in your packet. We've sent it off. We did talk to Caltrans staff, and they are going to be, they're probably going to receive a lot of letters on this plan because the high-speed rail is in it. So they said that you would have the opportunity tonight to confirm and ratify this letter. If you have any additions to it, we could edit it. If you have any changes, we could change it and retransmit it, and they'd be willing to accept it, provided that we can get it to them by this Friday, the 22nd. So I'll ask if you'd like to confirm the letter or edit it at this time. Staff is at the ready to take your comments.
Any questions? Yes?
Yes, Martin, was anyone omitted that sent comments in from the letter?
Was
From any
omitted?
of yeah.
We didn't actually receive any comments. We heard from the city of Hercules, and then we contacted San Joaquin regarding the Oakland station.
The Oakley
and we also
station.
spoke with the Oakley station, and we also spoke with City of Oakley staff. So that all of the entities that we contacted supported these comments.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion?
John, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Probably not needed. I would say, as your representative on the San Joaquin JPA, the letter here is very consistent with what the San Joaquin JPA is submitting in its comments for the state rail plan regarding Contra Costa.
Okay, so we need a motion to confirm transmittal.
Move to confirm.
Yes, okay. Motion by Arnrick, second by Abelson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. The next item, correspondence and communications, is in your packet. Associated committee reports are in your packet. Anybody want to add anything to any of those? Commissioner and staff comments. My only comment is happy holidays and happy solstice. Commissioner's comments, Commissioner Arner.
Yeah, I mentioned this at APC. I had a wonderful opportunity to go to China, and starting in Beijing and ending up in Shanghai, and toured the Shanghai province in the city of Jiading, which is a city of about 12 million people. And it is the heart and center of, in China, of automobiles. SAIC, who is one of our partners that signed up on Monday, which is the second largest Chinese auto manufacturer. They produce about 5 million cars a year. They're doing autonomous vehicle testing there that I got to see. I also got to, and by the way, just full disclosure, I did this on my own. This has nothing to do with anybody. I didn't pay for this. Yes, nothing to do with that. But fascinating, they built an entire park, an innovation park, that's probably got three-quarters of a million square feet, a variety of buildings on a campus-like effect, just for companies to locate there to be able to develop autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles. They are master plan oriented. Randy knows this. They build a model of it, and then they build the buildings. And they build the buildings before that. And they also built an autonomous vehicle testing track. It's very perfect. In fact, that's probably what's really wrong with it. It's too perfect. But it was great. Just no sooner I got back, and I like to take credit, but I have no credit. It just happened to be coincidentally SIAC signed up at Gomenham Station. But Jiading is coming over in May. We're doing an agreement with them, an MOU. They want to come over and join our autonomous vehicle testing and be able to see what we're doing and try to test their vehicles and see what they can learn. I watched a test that they were doing, and in Shanghai, it's about impossible to park a car. You really shouldn't drive there. And their autonomous vehicle testing is that you drive your car to where you're going, you get out and push the button, and the car finds its own parking place, and then it comes back.
What a dream.
And it was pretty fascinating. They had a technical problem. It went down to a parking garage, and what do you think happened? It went subterranean. It lost the signal. So the car died about 3/4 of the way down the ramp. It couldn't do anything. But they are really working, a lot of very young, bright engineers. It's exciting to see the world's getting smaller.
So they're going to beat us? They're going to beat us?
No, I don't think they're going to beat us, but I think if we all get on the same page, we'll all do better and make the world safer. The last thing I would say is it appears that they are going to require, in the next probably 5 years, all vehicles in China, all vehicles are electric. We drove in one of SIAC's vans. We didn't even realize an electric vehicle until about the end of the day. And it was pretty amazing. Their battery technology needs to get up there because they're a little heavy, but I think the world's getting smaller.
Commissioner Glover.
Thank you. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Randy and the commission meeting here today, because we should understand we have a real jewel within this individual, not only what he does day to day, but on the ability that's taken place with the Naval Weapons Station and Movision. But he made a presentation at my breakfast meeting that I have on a quarterly base and described the projects that we've been doing here and those opportunities and what's taking place at the Naval Weapons Station and what those opportunities look like for the future. And this is the type of stuff that we need to be putting on CCTV and other places, because people don't realize what this agency does and where their dollars are going. And so when we go out and we're looking for our particular measures, and this instant, our failed measure, we need to have done some upfront work, and we need to get out there what this body is doing each day. And really, Randy, you're to be commended, because I think when we allow his mouth to be open up in our district, he does an outstanding job, a great presentation. And I really would like to see if we have some videos or something that we could start running on CCTV. In particular, the type of presentation that you gave at the breakfast, which was excellent, and I'm still getting calls talking about how great that presentation was. So wanted to commend him and this body, but at the same time request that we start being a little bit more out there and showing the type of projects that we are doing, because people don't know where they come from, how they're paid for, and we need to take some credit for the work that's being done. And so we need to continue to have the face of our executive director out there, and I plan on doing it within this next year to try to make him available and getting out there and selling what it is we're doing. I think that gives us an opportunity that when we go before the voters and try to increase our tax measure, that we'll be successful in making that happen. But when people don't know, we have that problem. So thank you again, Randy.
Okay, Mr. Keller.
Thank you. In the spirit of Supervisor Glover's comments about CCTA, I thought maybe it would be helpful for you all to hear about some of the things that have been going on at BART. And a couple of things that we're very proud of, that at a recent board meeting, we signed 2 wind and solar contracts, which by 2021 will make BART 90% using renewable energy, way ahead of any other agencies that I'm aware of in the Bay Area, and on our way to achieving a goal of 100% renewables by 2045. The added benefit of the contracts we signed, that these are fixed rates, so we estimate that over the 20-year term of these contracts, BART will save $174 million. So it's good for the environment, it's good for our riders, and it's certainly good for our budget. Another area, and there's handouts for all of you to take or do it with as you please. Those of us who live in eastern Contra Costa County have heard for years, why is BART using a diesel vehicle in the eastern extension? Why don't we use electric, or why don't we use a cleaner fuel? Well, there's good news on that front as well. We've signed 5-year contracts which will allow BART to use a renewable diesel fuel which is 100% petroleum-free with a 0% carbon footprint, further reducing the environmental pressure from increased carbon. So eBART was going to step us down. We're going to take about 4,000 cars off of the road, which was an improvement to the environment. This will step us down to 0 for those trains. Our press releases, you may or may not have seen them, were a little hesitant because we were waiting for the manufacturer of the diesel motors to tell us that we could use this fuel. We had a verbal commitment, but before we wanted to make any certain comments, but we've now gotten in writing. So using this fuel when we open won't in any way jeopardize our warranty on the diesel engine. So both our trains and our cars are going to benefit from that as well. And at the last meeting, there was a comment about parking, and I understand parking is very difficult for all of us when we use the BART system, but I wanted to at least share with you BART's single-day parking pass program. So if you know you have a commitment somewhere and you need to have a parking space, you can go online, the website is here, and you can purchase a one-day parking pass which will allow you to park and reserve parking before 10 a.m. And if you go online, and it'll tell you which stations have the possibility of a space for you, so you can just pick a station that's closest to you. So I know it's frustrating. I'm frustrated as well as everyone else, but there are tools that you can use to make your experience at BART much more positive, and this is one of the tools that I think will be very helpful. So thank you, and Happy New Year, and Merry Christmas to everyone at CCTA.
Joe, a question. Looking at the Pittsburgh station, which is considered a kiss and ride, is there any plans for the future of parking?
As you know, on Bliss Avenue, BART has for years had a parking lot that Tridelta uses.
Right.
I'm probably going to get this number wrong, Federal, but I think it's 262 spaces, which will be available on the day we open. And some of those will be permanent. We're going to assess how to use those spaces best. But Tridelta, as those of you on the board know, they have a 20-minute shuttle through
Right.
Pittsburgh, so it'll be much more useful than it has been in the past. Goes to the college, down to the marina, and hopefully with some good luck when we open, or close to when we open, they can get that down to 15 minutes so they can meet each train, which will make it much more attractive to people to use the bus. But yeah, there'll be those parking spaces. We'll just assess to see where we are. Undoubtedly, we'll be hearing about a need for additional parking spaces, but I think the city of Pittsburgh did a great job with the Kiss and Ride facility you're building.
Commissioner,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Pierce.
Yes, two things. Thank you, Joel, for the information about the single-day parking pass to allow you to park before 10 a.m. in the permit spots.
You're welcome.
After my rant at the meeting last month, he did not chastise me publicly, but I hereby give a mea culpa. I did not know about that program. I knew about the reserve parking for airport and stuff like that. I did not know that you could reserve a parking place in the reserve prior to 10 p.m. permit parking only area, which are the only places left at the Concord station in those hours. So thank you, and I will, I'm sure, be doing that. Even at $6, it's cheaper than parking in the neighboring office tower for 12, or a ticket by far. Yes, so thank you with that. The other thing is I wanted to report out that I attended on behalf of CCTA as your representative to CalCog, the California Council of Governments, Association of Council of Governments. We attended the CalCog board retreat in Oakland on the 27th and 28th, where we looked at what we will be working on over the next year and all of the things that we as congestion management agencies and self-help counties and big and small councils of government are working on in the state of California so that we can speak with a single voice legislatively and for advocacy. And we are working to really improve and upgrade the level of advocacy that we have, and we have been instrumental. Our executive director has been in the room for the negotiations for almost every major transportation bill over the last several years. So he is the one that a lot of people come to for information about what does it mean to the CMAs, and he's able to help speak for us collectively. So it was a good meeting, and I think we are being very, very well served by that organization.
Commissioner Hudson.
Yeah, I thank you for the same reasons, Joel, for not jumping up and down, though I won't hit you about the escalator that still isn't working.
I can't, I'm sorry, I can't hear. You're not speaking of it.
No, I won't say anything about the escalator that still isn't working at Park. But I have to tell you that probably the most reasonable thing you didn't bring up today is that airport parking. I mean, it has to be about a quarter of what you'd pay for long-term parking at San Francisco, and you probably get to that parking lot faster if you take BART straight out of the airport to wherever.
That's right.
Extremely reasonable at $7 a day. Very easy to get the permit. I'd strongly recommend it, especially if you're on a CCTA's parking rebate program or whatever it is. It works very well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Everybody's loving you tonight, Joel. Can we?
We don't want to grand slam here.
Can we? Did Karen Basting put this together? Can we contact her for an electronic copy of some of this?
Karen has been promoted.
Oh, good for her.
So let me have someone contact you.
Or if you can just send it to Terry Ann. Well, because I want to put it in a newsletter, PDFs are too. I need a Word document.
Nikki will contact your office, and we'll make arrangements for you to get the information. Nikki.
Thank you very much.
From BART staff in the audience.
Nikki comes to our friends meetings all the time.
Oh, hi, Nikki. If you can just send an electronic copy to my office, that would be great. Or to Terry Ann, and then she can just disseminate it to all of us.
We'll get it to you.
Thank you. We'll do some PR for you.
Perfect.
There you go, spread the word.
Amy?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to report to the board that MTC had its first workshop today on RM3. And we received the polling results from EMC, did a extensive poll, 4,000 voters, 4,100 voters in the 9 Bay Area counties, to look at the voter receptivity to RM3. You know, the results were very interesting, and we have copies of it. Lindsay has copies of the whole poll, but I just wanted to give you a couple of highlights as it relates to the whole measure and then Contra Costa County. But what it turns out is what we tested was, you know, the the legislative authorization provides for up to $3 poll, and as you know, that would fund programs in Contra Costa County, including our share of ferries and regional bus. BART expansion cars, Bay Area Highway 4 express lanes, Highway 684 improvements, our share of the Bay Trail, but safe routes to transit, Capital Corridor, we talked about Hercules tonight, and then also the Richmond-San Rafael access improvements on the Richmond side, just to name the kind of the highlights, as well as East County Vasco improvements, the intermodal transit station, and Highway 680 transit improvements. So those are the major projects that are included in this. What's interesting is that there was very little voter variation between $1 and $3, which you'd expect it would be different, but it's very, very close. So the sense was that what we tested was the idea of a toll, either a $1 or a 1 + 1 or a 1 + 1 + 1 toll, with the idea that if we're over $1, it would be phased in incrementally, not at one time. And so what they tested was the maximum was a $3 toll over a 4 years between the three tolls, between each toll increase. And that ultimately, after the polling, and again, this didn't test negatives, it just tested here are the projects, here are the programs. Bay Area wide, it was about a solid 59% yes, 37% no.
Then and it wasn't broken down by county?
It was, yeah. And I want to, we can get you those rundowns by county, but it's interesting to see in Contra Costa County was below 50%, but it actually gets pretty close to 50%. I've got them right here. Well, Julie wants to add some comments, and I'll find the exact number.
It actually goes over 50%.
Goes over for 50%.
After they heard about the projects. I gave the breakout information that we got today at MTC to Lindsay, and Lindsay's going to scan it and be able to get it out to all of us. Because much of this was a handout. It landed on our desk today. I've actually, just after the meeting, have now scheduled a call with a pollster to talk about whether it makes a difference if we go to a 2-year increment in between the increases or not. One of the little technicalities of the language of the bill allows for CPI indexing after the third dollar is implemented. So if you go 8 years before you start indexing, you can't raise as much money. I mean, it's still nice. You can still bond for it because you're only going to bond for it as projects come ready to spend the money. So it doesn't really affect the amount of bonding you can do, but it does affect the total amount of money that you might raise. The question will be, because they specifically asked about 4-year increments, whether a 2-year increment is going to make a difference. And what's fascinating about the demographics of this election in June, in a gubernatorial, non-presidential election, especially where you don't have a really hot contest for governor, at least at this point, and you don't have anything really earth-shaking on the ballot, the turnout is 40% over 65, it's 70% homeowners, and it's almost 70% people who don't use the bridge. And the income level is very, very high. Most of them over $150,000 a year for family income. So a lot of these folks are the only folks that show up in those June elections. So it means that the Contra Costa vote is very favorable then for something like this, because these folks aren't, either they can easily afford it or they only use the bridge occasionally. Very few of these folks, like a third, use the bridge regularly, and those who used it regularly voted overwhelmingly in favor. And the other folks either never use it or only occasionally use it, and they all consistently supported this as well. So it was an interesting peek into how Contra Costa votes in an off-year election at the June timeframe. And so my question tomorrow for the pollster is the response that we got really have anything to do with the 4-year increment, or is it more the demographics of the election? Will that really make a difference, or do we need to poll that again? Because I am very concerned that if you wait till the year 9 to be able to index, you've lost a lot of ground. So it will be interesting to see what more we learn, but we will make that decision in January.
I think the other question that was pointed out by Julie also was, we didn't test whether the 3%, $3 could be done all at once, and what would that look like?
Yeah.
And that may be an opportunity to also see what that does.
Yeah, so I think when you look at change in support, once you go through the project list, Contra Costa on the definite yeses for, it's interesting, for $1, this is just the yes, not the leans, because lean takes it over 50, but if you just look at the yes, 45% per dollar, it goes up to 47 with $2, and then it pops back to 42 for the $3 sequence. So, there's some nuances. I know there are a variety of perspectives on this. It's interesting, consistent with our measure, and probably the work we did to educate our voters the last couple of years. The highest, 80%, the highest priority within Contra Costa County was the 680 Route 4 interchange. Second at 80% was purchasing new BART cars. This is Joel's night tonight, but to run more frequent and longer trains. Thirdly, at 77% was reducing truck traffic congestion, improving air quality. 72% was improving Trans-Bay bus service and carpool access during commute time. So those are our express lanes. And then at 71% was planning, designing a second Trans-Bay rail crossing to provide additional capacity. So I think that's for Senator DeSaulnier there. But the idea of an additional crossing. So it was a very interesting results. So the process will be, we're going to take a little bit finer look at some of these results to really understand what they mean in terms of voter attitudes and the decision points that MTC will be making. I think everybody, the focus is to go, if we go, would be to go in June. And second of all, to look at this idea, everybody agreed, the sequencing of the toll, the dollar, whether it's a $3, whatever the final number. We didn't do any voting at all. It was just getting questions, getting the polling information, and then we will meet again. The first go at this again, the second go will be the VADA Oversight Committee at the beginning of January, and then at our final January meeting, we will make a final decision on the measure.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And it was very interesting what Julie said. One of our criticisms for Contra Costa was that Santa Clara could carry this because those people don't cross the bridge. I'm concerned that in the polling that, unless I misheard you, we need to find a way to poll an equal amount of bridge users versus non-bridge users in Contra Costa County. And I don't know if that means going to fast track, because what we're doing is we're asking people who use the bridges to fund projects that others will benefit from. And I understand that we've got to get some money and do this, but I'm concerned if you do ask for additional polling that there's an equal amount. I know these are random, and I don't know how many Contra Costa people were asked, but I really think we need to be asking some fast-track people because I think you'd get different results.
The respondents were proportional to the populations in each county, and so the more numbers that were polled were, I think it was, off the top of my head, it was about 20% of them were Santa Clara, then it was dropped down to like 19 or something like that for Alameda, and 14% for us. It was surprisingly close to the actual population differences.
Oh,
San Francisco had less people polled than we did.
No, I get that, Julie.
But it's hard, in a random poll, you can't identify
You know what?
the users.
Can I just interrupt?
You guys are kind of getting off topic.
Yeah, we are.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, my purpose was just to report out, so I agree, we can leave it at that.
We can place it on a future agenda.
It'll be on an agenda.
Yeah.
Consider
Happy to talk to you.
consider it reported. And before we go to the next item, Newell inspired me to give my own travel log. So about 2 weeks ago, I went to the North American Mayor's Energy Summit in Chicago, and it was just a 1.5-day affair, but it was hosted by Mayor Rahm Emanuel of Chicago and Mayor Anne Hidalgo from Paris. And we discussed the transportation sector, and we rode on the world's first long-range 45-foot battery electric over-the-road coach, manufactured by BYD, headquartered in Burlingame, manufactured in Lancaster. So I'm wondering when we're going to see these on the Bay Area highways. It was very cool. And also, President Obama came and spoke to us, and Ed Lee was there, and as were 51 mayors from the U.S. and abroad, representing population of 60 million people, and we all signed a compact agreeing to uphold the Paris Accords, regardless of what our leader in Washington is doing.
Where was this held?
Chicago.
Where was it held?
Chicago, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to executive staff comments.
Commissioners, happy holidays from the 20-person team here at CCTA. Thank you, Commissioner Glover, for that nice remarks, but it's we before me. I mean, we have a great team that really kind of is trying to push the ball forward and trying to find new ways of moving people, goods, and services here in Contra Costa County. And it's good to see, so Lindsay has hired a new firm called Convey, and it's good to see that the new slide deck mesmerizes everybody here into a good move, so we really appreciate that. Almost 8 years ago, you hired me, and one of the questions was, can you raise the profile of this organization? So that's what, I'm still under those marching orders, and we're still doing that together. We did meet with Assemblymember Frazier, and we had a great meeting. He actually wrote a letter of support for additional funding. We have a $70.6 million hole on the 684 Phase 3. It looks like I have a conference call with Director Doherty tomorrow morning, and so hopefully we'll have good news that we laid out a funding proposal that involves about $38 million out of SB1 in two pots, 19 million each, and then we're about $32.6 million short. We can get that out of the State Highway Operation and Protection Program. So there's a plan forward. Been giving a lot of speeches around the nation and other countries. We went down to Northeastern University. There's still a good chance that they want to connect. How do you say that, Lindsay? Experiential learning, where 3 years book learning, but getting hired by a firm like SAIC or others, they get paid like an employee and they learn about the business, and then hopefully it expands to our partners, and we'll have a 4-year major university here in Contra Costa County. Nothing against St. Mary's College, by the way. Gave a speech at San Pablo Dam Road, or San Pablo Rotary Club. And I made the mistake of saying, please ask me any question during the presentation. I almost didn't get out. I had to cut the thing off short, but they asked a number of questions about technology, but most importantly, they asked about a section of roadway that we're fixing now, the Central Avenue. We're going to come in, trench, put electronics in, and reroute traffic from the Costco during weekends onto 580, not 80, but the roadway condition is horrible. And we're redoing the ramps for wheelchair access onto the sidewalk, and two sections of the sidewalk are heaved up. And so what we've done is we're working in partnership with the city of Richmond and trying to find a way of fixing it. So when we leave that work zone, it's better than when we got it. And I think that's kind of the spirit of how we operate, how the 20-person team here operates. And so we got a lot of negative feedback. I think we're going to turn that into positive, and then we'll follow up with information about what we did there, and hopefully they'll see the results. And then lastly, I gave the keynote speech in Nyborg, Denmark, to the Road Forum, and they want to do what we're doing. And I did say we have a 4-country agreement. We can actually add a 5th country. We have a current agreement is with the country of Singapore, the country of Australia, the country of New Zealand, the country of Contra Costa. So they said they would like to be the fifth.
Really raise our profile.
The fifth in that country. So that's my report. Thank you, and happy holidays. And it's these 19 people that here are just fantastic. They really is a good team. So thank you.
Okay, you have the calendar attached for next year. Is there anything else for the good of the order? What? Yes, holiday party next door. If nothing else, we are adjourned.